and it's recording.
Hi, my name is Cindy Smith. This is Queer Studies, a 3-credit course, and it's professional and undergraduate and graduate credit. This is the first lecture. It's an introductory informational class and lecture, and we're going to go over some guidelines and some initial information to get you started in the class. So welcome. And next slide, please. So the first thing we're going to do is guide you to the syllabus. And the syllabus is going to give you information about the assignments, the ideas of the class, the assignments document, our contact information, which is going to be this semester through Google Meets. It might be through Zoom in the future. It might be in person in the future. Again, contact information, materials for the class, and the class guidelines, which we're going to discuss in just a little bit. And in terms of assignments, again, all information is going to be on Google Meets. There's a screenshot of it. This semester, communication can be through email or through Google Meets. You'll see that all students are able to post and comment through Google Meets. All information on materials will be posted. All assignments will be posted. Links to all course materials will be posted so that you only have to upload your assignments there. Materials are free to you. You can purchase your materials if you need them through the bookstore, whatever bookstore you use, or online. And links to the library of the institution will also be available. Everything is on reserve, so you don't have to put cash out for your materials. Again, if you'd like to own them, you can do that. The bookstore will have the materials for you. Check on Google Meets, Google Classroom rather, for updates. Again, here's a screenshot. Sorry, it's backwards. But I assure you that on Google Classroom, it will not be backwards. Any questions coming to myself or your TA for the semester, just email or ask a question on the post, appropriate post on Google Classroom, which we're finding to be very useful. And if you're unfamiliar with Google Classroom, again, just ask a question and we will get you straightened out. But it's divided into a stream, assignments, and grading, and a section where you can find yourself and all your posts for your assignments. So it's pretty straightforward, and feel free to ask any questions at any point. Next slide, please. So requirements for credit. Requirements are going to be weekly readings and viewing responses. So we will have a combination of weekly reading assignments and viewings. Viewings are going to be a combination of links to videos. YouTube will be a YouTube channel with specific lectures that will include lectures like this that have been recorded specifically for this class. They will be links to lectures, to videos that are specific to this class or that are material that are usually popular sources or lectures by authors that are in response to issues for this class. And then they will be viewing and reading responses that are posted on the assignment link on Google Classroom, and those will be worth, the weekly responses will be worth 30%. The second requirement, the academic requirement, will be participation in synchronous discussion. We're going to have or try to arrange a once a week synchronous discussion, and I'm going to take your suggestions for when you're available, and we'll set that up before the first week of class. If we are not able to do that, we'll have an alternate plan for that. But the participation in discussion is quality rather than quantity, and you'll be asked to respond to the readings and to peer discussion comments, and that's worth 20% of the grade. The two written requirements for the class are a proposal on a topic of your choice, which we'll talk more about, and that's 20%. The proposal is for a topic for class participation, which includes a thesis and a suggestion for evidence and a few suggested sources. And then the presentation itself, which will be a synchronous in-class presentation in the last class. And again, the proposal and the synchronous presentation are linked together. We're going to talk more about that too, but that's a combined 50% of your grade, 20% and 30%. We're going to talk more about these in the first class, but they're also explained more in the syllabus. They'll each have a separate sheet for prompts, and we can get more into that as we move along a little bit and in the first synchronous discussion. So there will be prompt sheets. They'll be explained in further detail on the assignment, but those are the four requirements for credit for this course, adding up to 100% of your grade for credit. Okay, next slide, please. So the class guidelines, and here is one of my favorite pictures. This is a picture from a photo from last semester of a student whose name is obviously Samuel, but he decided to do his in-class presentation from the glass studio at the college where the course was being presented. And he fired up the blowtorch to present a demonstration of the art project that he was doing for his final in-class presentation, and got a very lovely reaction from a lot of his classmates. And I asked him if I could use this picture to demonstrate the types of the varieties of the different synchronous presentations that were given in class. And he said absolutely. He was thrilled for that. So class guidelines for this type of the class always start for any type of class, live class. Respect for others, positive discourse, support for all identities, very important in any class that involves personal identities as well as academic content. Intersectional learning, we're going to talk more about what intersectionality is and what it means. This is definitely a fluid academic atmosphere. We're going to listen before we speak, and we're going to avoid what I call social media speech, which is anything that is short, that cuts somebody else off, that shows disrespect, or the fact that our minds might already be made up about a topic. And the reason that we have these guidelines is that, again, this is an academic class about a topic that can be that can have sensitive content. I'll just say that. And what we want to keep in mind is that we are all here to learn, that we are all here to hopefully ask questions, that we are all here to support each other, and that we're all here to create community, not to tell each other what we think and then turn our backs on each other. So we're all here to support each other's learning. We're all here to expand our notion of community, identity, history, and discourse. And discourse, support, and learning are our most important objectives as far as I'm concerned. So we will go over these guidelines. We will discuss them. This class, I suppose the most important thing to me is that this is a place of safety and learning for everybody. So these things work themselves out. It's a little different when it's an online course and we're doing our own work, but where we can all post and respond, the respect for others needs to be there. Where we all want this to be a safe community for ourselves and others, we need to remember respect and care for others. We need to remember to listen. And where we hope this will be at least once a week a synchronous meeting. Those values need to extend. And this is not just a college class, this is a class and values and ethics that extend beyond the college into the community. And remember that this is what we want to create for ourselves and others in not only the LGBTQAI community, but beyond. And as we intersect with other communities in terms of activism, in terms of working to save the planet, in terms of creating a world that we all can live in, can sustain, and keep valuing and keep extending, that these are the values in the classroom that we all look to create for ourselves and for everybody else. So these are our class values, and we'll look to each other to support them as well, and look to ourselves first. So think of your neighbor, your peer first, and you'll do just fine. Okay, thanks. Next slide, please. All right, so the first thing that I want to talk about is introductions. One of the things that I do in a synchronous class or in a live class is get everybody to introduce themselves. So you can introduce yourself by your name of choice, by your pronouns, and it's up to you how you introduce yourself. Some people like to use their gender, sex, race, ethnicity, class, their major, their ability, their age, their work, or any other identifiers. Politics, sex, religion, ethnicity, where they're from, their hometown. So any identifiers that you feel comfortable using in when you introduce yourself for the first time in the chat or in the synchronous group um, is fine with me. You and with the rest of the group, you don't have to feel bound to introduce yourself by anything in particular. We're not going to ask you to do any kind of identifying in particular, and there are reasons for that. One of them being that I'm very much tied to the idea that choice and fluidity, and especially in terms of groups and identity, are something that I'm a firm believer in. And I will ask all my students as well as all my peers to be open to changing your mind as you go through life, and to making different choices for yourself and not holding other people to their choices. So another issue that is important that I want you to keep in mind in terms of your learning, in terms of other people's learning, and in terms of your project for your for credit for this class is think about why you decided to sign up for this class. It could be that you just needed 3 social science credits, but that's not why most people sign up for this particular class, to have it on their transcript. So think about why you took this class, what issues you'd like to look into further. And one of the reasons for me asking you to do a proposal halfway through, a proposal is due week 3, and the final project is due week 6, which is our last class, is so that not only you can learn more about the reasons, the issues or issue that drove you to take this class, but so that other people can learn from your interest in a particular topic too. So this is your chance to research your own interests more fully as a guided research topic. Sorry, I left it off in the middle of the sentence there. I'll fix that. That you can present it to the class as a topic of general interest, not only for yourself, but for your peers in this class and for the queer community at large. This is a social science class, so we'll talk a little bit in the first class about what a social science is. It's not group therapy, it's not psychology, it's not counseling, but it is the study of institutions and structures. And we will talk more when we get together about what that exactly means in the global context, and how it relates to hard sciences, issues like climate change, resource management, living on the planet together, and how it relates to being responsible for not only your own learning, but the learning of others, how it relates to your art, how it relates to design, how it relates to your careers here at MassArt, and how it relates to your careers as you go through and decide how you're going to live your lives beyond MassArt. So there are all sorts of larger issues with a social science approach to a field like queer studies, trans studies, ethnic studies, um, age studies, disability studies, what terminology you use, these kinds of issues. So we'll get more into the sort of global look at um, um, what queer studies means as a global field, as an academic field, and how it relates to your lives, and how you could use it not only as a 6-week summer course, but how you can apply it to your art, to your other fields, and think in a larger sense of how to apply it to your lives. Okay, next slide, please. And here are some of the terms and uses that we want to think about when we think about how to apply queer studies. And here is, appropriately enough, Rico thinking very early back in the history of this course about how to apply the ideas from the tree of knowledge to his own life, which he's done very successfully. But some of the terms that we're going to be looking at, and in your first reading by Eve Kosofsky-Sedgwick, the first term we're going to think about is the term queer, and how it might mean a bit of discomfort for some of you. It's been reclaimed, but in its early British uses in the early part of the 20th century, it meant different, other, outside, weird. And I was watching an Australian broadcast the other day on television, and they talked about queering the deal or queering the play. So it's still in the vernacular, it's still in the use today, in having nothing to do with being homosexual, having nothing to do with being gay. So we need to be mindful of that, but we have also, as a community, we have reclaimed it. And academics have claimed it, including LGBTQAI plus, all identities of the queer spectrum, and also used it as a theoretical point to mean queerness, transness, to mean thinking about ideas differently, everything from history to gender studies, to women's studies, to ethnic studies, to BIPOC studies, to Latinx studies, to anything you want to study. Queerness and transness are applied as theoretical paradigms. So we're going to talk about those as we look at readings, both newer readings and older readings, and see how they are applied academically and in the light of research. Two terms that you might be, prefixes that you might, of course, be familiar with are cis and trans. They are both Latin prefixes, cis meaning on the same side as, and trans meaning on the other side of, or the other side from. And they both applied geographically when they were first used in Latin around the first century BC to the 1st century AD. Cis meant, was used as in cisalpine, meaning on the same side as the Alps, meaning closer to Rome, and trans meaning on the other side from, or on the other side of, meaning on the other side of the Alps, meaning on the side of the barbarians. So there's an interesting thought, meaning the Germanic tribes, meaning different from. So crossing over that type of meaning. So that's an interesting thought when you're thinking about the appropriation of prefixes and the root of English in Latin, of course. Um, so terms very important when you're learning a new discipline. You have to learn the terminology. Same as if you're learning art or a design field, you have to learn the terminology. Same in queer studies. So ideas, social sciences, again, queer and transgender theory, ideas of social sciences, probably the most important, the idea of heteronormativity and patriarchy, very important. The idea in the West, that being bound up in heterosexual models, whether it's marriage, government, education, medicine, that everything is bound up in a binary model, a 1-2 model of male, female, is expected. It's the culture. It's a cultural expectation that all of us, when we were born, are bound into a pink blue model of monogamy, male, female, young, old, good, bad, black, white, no matter what our identity is. That's expected of us. We're born into it. We learn it. It's practically genetic. And that when we are not self-identified that way, when that's not who we are inside, there's a great struggle always against the fact that we are forced into that in every system that we are forced to live in. That it's also patriarchal, that cis, white, able-bodied males are in charge in every system, that systemic racism, misogyny, homophobia, transphobia, ageism, ableism, etc., are the order of the day. And what does that mean if you are LGBTQAI? We don't look at it in this class as victimhood. We look at it as other. And how do we live whole, productive, happy lives as whole people on a more fluid, choice, functional scale outside? Other. And different, as we said in the original sense of the word, queer lives, functional, happy, different, whole, not as victims. We're going to look at intersectionality, which is salient identities, shared action, and we'll get into that later, but there's a sense of what we call alternative narratives, groups that are not in power, that are not part of the heteronormative patriarchal systemic power structures of society, that have created alternative narratives in order to function, not only survive, but function at a level of success that is outside of the system. And again, do it successfully, not just survive, but thrive. So intersection is intersection of multiple salient identities, whether it's race, gender, sex, class. There's always a sense of class. There's always a sense of, there may also, originally it was race, class, and gender. Now we've added the idea of sexuality, and so sometimes ability, age, and all of these multiple salient identities, which means an identity that you cannot change, not only that you would not change, but cannot change. And all of these identities need to come together under the umbrella of activism to ask for some change in the system, to force some change in the system. We're seeing a lot of that now. This is a good thing. We're going to look for some of the history of that. We're going to look for some of the basis of that. And we're going to look for how we can actively bring that into progressive change in the system. So these might all look new to you right now. You might have heard some of them, especially with Black Lives Matter, everything from feminism to ethnic studies to Latinx movement to Asian visibility to queer rights, trans rights, and they're all bound up with each other right now. So this is all very important stuff. Okay, next slide, please. And we're also going to look at the beginnings of the academic field, and they start in literature and philosophy. The first reading that we're going to have, Eve Kosofsky Sedgwick, who started in, believe it or not, it started in literary criticism, and she started as a specialist in Gothic literature. And we did a very interesting class one semester on queer lens reading of Frankenstein. And Eve Sedgwick, unfortunately, died very early of breast cancer, but was really one of the founders of queer studies as an academic discipline. The entire discipline got its founding in women's studies, feminist studies, Black studies, ethnic studies, and all based in alternate readings, alternate philosophies. Eve Sedgwick was the first one to talk about the queer lens, and we're going to talk more about what the queer lens means and how to read things in a queer way, how to think about things in the queer way from literature to films, what happened before there was Stonewall, what happened before there was a way to think about things in a queer way, what those of us who were older did when we didn't have, pride and, rainbows on television and before the rainbow flag and when everything was underground. And believe me, everything existed. What Eve Sedgwick did was take the writings of other people, like Michel Foucault in the middle there, who was a gay philosopher, French, working in the 40s and 50s. And what he talked about was deconstruction, which is taking traditional philosophy apart, history and philosophy apart, and literally deconstructing it. History of philosophy, and we're going to read some of him, and to really look at history. And we're going to take a look at some ancient history, medieval, early modern, and look at things in a completely different way and a non-traditional way. And again, this would be queering history, queering philosophy, queering traditional academic fields, which of course is what you do when you do anything from, wear drag to cut your hair in a different way. And then there's Judith Butler, who many of you may have heard of, a somewhat controversial lesbian philosopher, self-identified, who talks about everything from Judith Butler's big thing is performativity, but she talks everything about drag to performance versus performativity. And these terms might be completely unfamiliar to you at the moment, but I'm giving you the names so that you can get more familiar with them, and we'll do some reading and we'll talk about the definitions. So these are the three who are really the beginning of the actual academic field of queer studies, and we'll get into these a little bit as well. Next slide, please. And then there is Stonewall, which everybody is pretty much familiar with, which is the event itself, 1969, the culmination of years of raids on gay and trans bars, and the eventual result of that. And I can talk more about that because I was actually around, not for Stonewall itself, but in Boston for the fact that when you went to the bars in the 60s and the 70s, anybody could walk in, not just police, but straight people, straight men, anybody could walk in and hassle you. And the event of Stonewall was the Stonewall Bar, which was a trans bar in New York City, and anybody could walk in and hassle you. And on this particular night, the drag queens mostly the drag queens decided to fight back from the Stonewall bar. And the result in that, to make a very long story short, was that the anniversary of the arrests that happened at Stonewall, which is the picture on the left, became the celebration of the anniversary of that event, with everybody hauled off to jail, became the Pride Parade. And as we go into Pride, it's June 2nd today. As we go into Pride, we'll talk about Pride and what happens there. Okay, next slide. So again, a little detail on the weekly assignments. The weekly assignments are going to be to read the assignment or view the assignments. Instructions will be posted, and these are the instructions. Take brief reading notes on the main points. Make sure that the reading notes are for yourself, to give you an idea of what's important in the essay or in the video to remember. Make sure that's done in a style that suits yourself, but I suggest either a brief outline or a list. And also include a short reaction paragraph to what you think about the author's ideas. And then be prepared to discuss these, the assignments, the readings, and the videos in class and in the following week. And then post the notes and the reaction to the assignment on Google Classroom. And then the presentation consists of 2 parts. On week 3, a 1-page written proposal with a thesis, suggestions for your argument, and a few suggested sources. And we'll have a brief individual meeting, probably by a phone call or an online meeting, for me to approve your topic, or by email. And then it'll be a synchronous in-class presentation to the class in the last class. And we'll talk more about that. And I'll post, it'll be a 10-minute presentation, the live presentation. And I'll discuss more about this, and I will post an assignment sheet with the points so you can get more detail. But the topic will be a topic of your choice, what you would like to learn more about in this class, more issues, either what you came in wanting to know more about, or something that you ran across in the meetings and in the class meetings or in the readings. Anything that you can think of that has to do with LGBTQAI issues. So feel free to also make an appointment with me. We can meet on FaceTime. We can do a Google Meets meeting, and just let me know what's on your mind that you'd like to know more about. And I think that might be the last slide. Is that right?
It is. That is the last slide.
Great. Thanks, Guilford. And so that'll be it for the first video. And thank you all very much. And thank you, Guilford. And looking forward to seeing everybody in the class. Please feel free to post items on Google Classroom. And we will see you at the next meeting, and we will see you at the next video. Thanks very much.